That's Pat Benatar there, and Love is a Battlefield. You heard it here on Zone Radio 88.5, the voice of the Valley. And the man who knows that love or life is a battlefield is a man who wrote a book called Life Less Lived. It's a passage through burnout and depression in the suburbs. His name is Richard Hawkey, and he's with me on the Zoom interview this afternoon. And we're going to be talking about this book and his experience. Good afternoon, Richard. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to be here. Thank you, Richard.
It's I'm going to be upfront and honest. I haven't read the book. I've kind of scanned through it, and I got a gist of what was going on. And from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your personal story through depression, through a whole lot of issues, and how you coped with it, and how you've essentially used that experience to put together something that somebody else can use to possibly manage a similar situation. But I'm going to leave it up to you to tell people what this is all about in the background to it. Just for the folks who are going to watch us on the video, there is the book, and we'll find out from Richard later how you can get a copy of it. All up to you, Richard.
Well, thank you. And first of all, thanks for this opportunity. It's always great to be able to raise awareness. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book, was to raise awareness. The main thing is I'm not anybody special. I'm kind of Mr. Average. You know, most of my clothes are medium. I quite like beige carpets. You know, I'm not anybody special. So when I burnt out and went through depression, I was really, really surprised. You know, how does this kind of thing happen to somebody like me? It was through no sort of specific trauma or loss or anything like that. It was just, mine was a very stress-induced, slow, gradual grinding down of my soul, if you like. People have likened it to being sort of grated away by a cheese grater over time. And, you know, I'm happily married. I had a good job, a house in the suburbs, all the stuff that's supposed to make us happy, mm-hmm. in inverted commas. So when I could no longer function, I got to a point in my life where I couldn't actually function anymore. And went to see the doctor and was diagnosed that I'd burnt out and was probably slipping into a severe clinical depression. Yeah, I was quite shocked because I thought it was quite normal, you know, to be tired all the time because, hey, you know, we live busy lives in the city. So that's kind of just normal. You know, it's also quite normal to be sort of cynical and negative. I mean, you know, let's just listen to the news, you know. How can you not be cynical with the world around you? And so on and so forth. You know, headaches 2-3 times a week, not really wanting to do what I used to do as much because, you know, hey, I'm busy. I've got stuff to do. So come the end of the week, I'm too exhausted to do anything. I just thought this was normal. And chatting to a number of people around me, as you do around the water cooler and the coffee machine, a lot of other people had similar kind of symptoms. So this is just the way we live our lives.
That kind of reinforces the normal, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah. It kind of does. It normalizes these symptoms. And we also get used to things. We're very adaptable as human beings. But just because we've gotten used to something doesn't necessarily mean it's good for us. So that's a word of warning for people, I suppose, is you know, if you have chronic symptoms, and I'll go through a few more in a minute, you know, go and see your doctor. The other thing that was quite interesting along the path, once I saw the doctor and started on some treatment, is just how prevalent this is. And I didn't realize that. You know, I was working in a large commercial organization. My postgraduate and my university training was from a very commercial perspective of business degrees. And we certainly didn't talk about this kind of stuff. You know, it's all about strategy and finance and all this good stuff. Yes, we know, we've heard that stress is bad for you, but certainly not to this extent and that it manifests this way and that it manifests quite so frequently. It's just that we generally don't talk about this kind of stuff too much. So we don't know that it's necessarily going on. When I started to recover, and the process took a while, and I started to speak to my group of friends again and interact with them again, I was quite surprised to find out just how many people kind of stuck up their hands and said, Yeah, remember a couple of years ago when I went away for a while? Yeah, I also had a bit of a breakdown. Oh, yes, I've been on antidepressants for years and years. Hadn't a clue. You know, we certainly didn't talk about it at brides or anything like that. And I'm not saying, you know, you have to sort of start holding hands and have kumbaya sessions around the braai and talk about your, you know, all your deepest troubles and everything. But the ability to talk about these things should just be as normal as talking about your asthma or your, you know, the upset
gout.
tummy, or your gout, indeed, yes. So, you know, what has happened in the 10 years since I wrote the book and since I went through this episode is there has been a gradual raising of awareness, which is around the world. There's definitely quite a lot of advocates within South Africa where we're starting to raise the level of awareness around mental health. In other countries, it's a little bit further advanced. One thing I would like to maybe just caution here is that, as with so many things, when we let the pendulum swing another way, it often swings a little bit too far. Now, we are one physiological creature. Our brains are not separate from our body. They are a completely interrelated and interlinked system. So yes, we have mental health, but we've got to be careful of separating mental health so completely from our overall physical health. Not only because mental health issues can manifest physically, but also some of the physical things that we can do. I call it the sort of the biomechanical and the biochemical things that we are in control of can impact our mental health positively and negatively.
Okay.
So, you know, they are interlinked. And maybe the simplest example is, you know, Richard, I don't know if you've ever had food poisoning.
Not that
maybe you've, okay, all right. Well, yeah, but that wasn't really helpful. You're supposed to say yes, Richard. Really see, we haven't rehearsed this interview. Okay,
for anybody who has that, yes, yeah.
So, or man flu. You must have had man flu.
No, I've had man flu. Man flu I've had.
Yeah. So when you have man flu, I mean, that's a physical illness. That's a virus. What were your moods like when you had man flu? You know, were you the happiest?
Yeah. No. Then I feel very sorry for myself. Indeed.
So how we feel physically affects how we feel emotionally, also how we are able to cognitively process things. So, you know, if we've got a cold, flu, whatever, you know, we're probably not the sharpest tool in the box. We struggle to concentrate. We've got, you know, cotton wool in the head. So these things, all I'm saying is they're interrelated. And it's worthwhile maybe now just going through some of those symptoms for people to maybe, you know, watch out for. And again, any questions you have, I urge you, go and speak with your doctor, or, you know, pick up the phone. There are organizations you can speak to as well, just to get it checked out. And you are not going to be alone. This is very, very prevalent. And again, so from a physical perspective, there are things like that chronic tiredness, interruptions to your sleep patterns, so not being able to sleep as well as you used to, feeling chronically tired, so waking up in the mornings and still not feeling refreshed. And I'm not saying you have to look like that lady in the CD Posturepedic advert, because nobody looks like that when they wake up. But, you know, if you're leopard crawling across the carpet in the morning to brush your teeth and you just can't get going, that's not, and that's a consistent thing. That's something you need to look into. Changes to your appetite. So either you start to lose an interest in food and you start to lose weight quite quickly. I lost 10 kilograms in a month, and it's not the kind of diet I would recommend. I just completely lost interest in eating, in food. There was no pleasure in tastes or anything like that. So, you know, the simple pleasures you get out of, you know, eating your favorite foods, having a lovely glass of wine, those kinds of things, if that's what you do, those disappear, start to go away. You don't want to do things you used to enjoy. So, you know, maybe on a Friday, you'd get together with your friends and have a dinner party or a braai at the weekend, or go to the movies, or whatever it is that you used to do, you just can't be bothered anymore. It's just too much faff and you're not interested. So when you start to notice that consistently, repetitive headaches is another thing to look out for. And also, this is a grown-up show, but there's nothing wrong with talking about these kinds of things as well, is lack of sexual desire. So that's one thing that is a very common symptom across men and women, in terms of the desire disappears. The desire starts to go away. And specifically with men at a point in time, the mind is no longer willing and the body is also weak. So those are something, again, we don't like to talk about these kinds of things, but it is one of the signs. Now, everything I'm saying, if you have a pre-existing health condition that you know about, maybe you're diabetic, maybe you've got hypertension and you're on certain medications, some of these symptoms can be brought about by other medical illnesses and medications. So again, go and check with your doctor. Just always check these things out. From an emotional perspective, often what happens is, yes, you start to get quite cynical, you get quite negative, you get quite sad, angry. So again, anger is a very good example, and it's always difficult in these politically correct times to bring up gender stereotypes, but I'm going to do it anyway. Men, on the whole, tend to manifest burnout and depression with anger. Ladies, it's not a hard and fast rule, obviously. There are exceptions to this. But in terms of our kind of societal acceptance of gender roles in society, men tend to get quite grumpy, short-tempered, angry, and unfortunately sometimes even violent. And ladies tend to get more tearful. Again, not a hard and fast rule. Broad generalizations. Some of the ways, again, that we tend to try to self-medicate. So some of the things we try to do to make ourselves feel better. Men tend to turn to alcohol and other substances to try and make themselves feel better. Ladies do as well, but men definitely so. And ladies tend to turn to food potentially. So these are some of the things, and over-the-counter medications. So, we've got to be careful about self-medicating. There's a wonderful thing out there called Dr. Google, and seek and ye shall find. We all have an inherent confirmatory bias. So we all seek out unconsciously information that supports our preconceptions and our judgments.
Yeah.
We might not know that we're doing it, and the internet will give you whatever you want.
Yeah, it ends up being less objective, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, the internet is fantastic if you know where to look. What I'm saying to you is go and see a medical professional.
Yeah.
They understand these things.
Now, you went through this process over a period of how long, Richard?
So in hindsight, which is always that wonderful thing, I was probably working on my burnout for 5 or 6, 7 years. I was probably steadily going down that slope.
Were people reacting to it? Were people trying to give you sort of, hey, you know what? You used to be a fun guy at the Briar. What's going on with you? Were you getting that? Were you getting those cues from your friends?
No, not at all. No, I wasn't. So, I mean, it might have been a case of, yes, they'd noticed that I was maybe withdrawing, so maybe wasn't going to as many Briars anymore. But hey, 2 small kids, busy life, hey, everybody understands that. So it wasn't that I was misbehaving badly in terms of I increasing my drinking, for example, which a lot of people do. I didn't do that, so that wasn't noticeable. I wasn't having violent or angry outbursts that were uncontrollable. So yeah, I mean, I was fairly miserable and fairly grumpy, but that was down to, again, just the world we lived in, the kind of stuff you're dealing with at work on a daily basis, those kinds of things. So no, I didn't get that heads up from people around me, except my wife, ultimately.
Well, yeah, and I see that she's been quite a lady reading in the book what you have to say about her and your kids and a host of other people. But so you went to a point. What happened when you got to this? You must have got to a point, Richard, where you said, either you or somebody said to you, listen, you got to do something about this. How did you arrive there? And just take us briefly through the sort of treatment you went through to a point where you decided, you know what, I'm going to share my story in this book.
Yeah. So it was actually around the time of the Soccer World Cup. And I'd taken some time off work. Myself and my eldest son and my wife had gone to see one of the soccer matches. Fantastic, wonderful sense of camaraderie, and the world is fantastic. And the next day we were off on holiday down to the coast. We live in Joburg. And it was, when we got on that holiday, it was almost, you often hear this from people, it's when you're in sort of a decompression state, you either implode or you explode. And during that sort of week-long period on holiday, a lot of the symptoms I'd had started to accelerate rapidly. So my appetite disappeared completely. I couldn't be bothered to, walk from the holiday house across the road to buy my kids an ice cream, which was really, really unusual. I became very, very sensitive to noise. So the sound of the TV, the sound of, two young kids doing what young kids do became intolerable. And I was obsessing about all the things that I had to do at work still, because of course, we've all got cell phones and you're still receiving emails and you're not switching off and not compartmentalizing those things. And it was really during that holiday that my wife said to me, look, this isn't kind of normal. When we get back to Joburg, you need to go and see our doctor. Okay. You just need to have a chat with them. And it was at that time I went to see the doctor, our family doctor, and he said, yeah, no, this looks exactly like what's happening to you. This is what burnout is in terms of how your adrenal glands work. And when you get to a stage of burnout, you flooded your body for so long with so much adrenaline to keep you functioning at a highly aroused state, that actually they've run dry, essentially, in sort of layman's terms. And the balances are all out. And that has consequential effects on certain neurotransmitter chemicals in your brain, which impact your sleeping patterns, your sexual desire, your eating, your ability to concentrate, a whole load of things. So, he gave me a very good explanation of it and said, look, you need to go on to some antidepressant medication. This is how antidepressants work. In the vast majority of people, you take these and, within a couple of weeks, it's like the lights come on and, off we go again. And then you can start worrying about how you're going to get some more balance in your life and look after yourself better. The unfortunate thing is I turn out to be one of those very small percentage of people who don't react very well to certain medications. And again, a lot of medications do have side effects. And some of those side effects you will adapt to over a few days. But I had some very severe side effects to them. So overnight, I became extraordinarily anxious. So it's called paradoxical anxiety. So you're taking medication that's supposed to make you feel better for depression, but it actually makes you feel worse in the short term. And again, I'm not blaming the doctor for this, but that education was not given to me. And I understand why a lot of doctors don't say, look, these are some of the side effects you can get. If you get it, phone me or stick with it for 3 days and let's check back and forth. So I went through a period of time, a couple of weeks, where I was trying different medications with the doctor before I actually eventually went to see a specialist. And a specialist in this area is a psychiatrist. And again, it took me a while to accept that, because in my ignorant preconceptions, you only see a psychiatrist if you're mad. And again, you know, I stick my hands up and apologize that I was so ignorant. If I broke my leg in 3 places, I would prefer to go and see an orthopedic surgeon. And it's just exactly the same thing with things like a mental health issue. You need to go and see someone who specializes in that area, and that's what a psychiatrist does. And it was, yeah, so we then got onto the correct medication, but I also started on something called cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's a type of psychotherapy, but it's a very specific, focused, practical, pragmatic type of psychotherapy. I didn't want to go in and understand what had happened in my childhood or those kinds of things. That wasn't relevant to me at that point in time. I wanted to understand what I could do myself to look after myself better and to learn some skills so that I could handle stress better. Because, you know, the complex world we live in isn't going to get any less stressful. So I need to learn some skills. And that type of therapy helped me understand how I burnt out in the first place, why stress had impacted me so badly, why a lot of that was down to me, and but more importantly, what I could do about it in a practical fashion on a day-to-day basis.
So when we look at the book, and I've flipped through it and I've looked at, kind of scanned it, there are a lot of sort of worksheets and practical kind of things that go on towards the end of the book. The first half is pretty much your story, and then the thing. Now, where in somebody's, probably the wrong word, but in somebody's cycle of diagnosis, shall I put it that way, would the book fit in? If for argument's sake, I've got a friend who's showing the kind of behavior that we've been talking about this afternoon, would that be a good thing to give them as part of a diagnosis and then hopefully a solution? Or is it something you can give a person post-diagnosis when they accept the fact, like you had, that I'm in this situation, I need to do something about it. Here's a book that can help you with that. Where does the book fit in, or does it fit into both places?
So, yeah, I mean, it fits into both places, and it also fits into giving it to a spouse, a loved one, a partner, a boss of someone who's concerned. I've had a lot of feedback from a lot of people who've come back and said, wow, you're describing my husband. You know, I read your book and it's like you were writing about my husband, or my wife, or some people who work for me. So what I wouldn't suggest is that it's the right thing for someone to read if they are at a very severe state of depression and are non-functional at that point in time. Because, you know, just the act of reading is a cognitive processing, and a lot of that is affected when you're depressed.
So you're saying be careful of when you give it to somebody as well. It's also important when you give it to somebody. Be careful. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. So, I mean, I always suggest is, you know, let your loved one read it first, and then, you know, maybe pass it on to the person who's been diagnosed. But again, I wouldn't suggest that this is just a self-help and you don't need to see a medical professional. You know, err on the side of caution, and go and speak with your doctor. You know, read the book, speak with your doctor, or speak with your doctor, then read the book. You know, whichever way around works for you. But don't cut out that medical professional. They're not going to look at you strangely. They're not going to say you're weak. This is something they see every single day. It is that prevalent. You know, the World Health Organization, obviously the current focus is a little bit off of these issues, but 2 years ago, the World Health Organization claimed that depression was now the single largest cause of disability in the world. And so it is very much a silent kind of epidemic, and it is affecting a lot of people around you. Generally, if you look around you, 10% of the people around you are affected to a greater or lesser degree where it is impacting their lives. So this is something that is very prevalent.
All right. Well, I think it's awesome. Now, tell the folk where they can find it and touch base with you, so that if anybody listening to us would like to lay hands on a copy of this book, how they can do that, Richard.
Okay, so unfortunately, it's not available in bookstores anymore for a whole host of really boring logistical reasons.
Okay.
It is available online, so you can order it online, or you can download the electronic book. So if you're Kindle or whatever, and the best place to do that is via Amazon. So Amazon.com or Amazon.co.uk. If you just search either under my name or Life Less Lived,
Okay.
it'll pop up. Can I give out an email address,
Oh, of course
Richard,
you
or is
can.
that not
Absolutely you
appropriate?
can. Absolutely you can. And what I'm going to also ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to email Judy so that she can put a post up onto our social media so that people who want to connect that way can get hold of you as well. So,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
sure. So, I mean, one thing before I give that out is I do want to say I won't get into an ongoing counseling relationship with anybody who contacts me, but I will respond. I will answer the question to the best of my ability and guide them to where they should go next. But I'm not going to get into, it would be unethical for me to get into an ongoing sort of counseling relationship. So the best way to probably get hold of me is Richard, that's easy, at Hello Foster, HELLOFOSTER.life. So it's not .com or .cozer, it's .life, L-I-F-E. Richard at hellofoster.life. So if you need to, if you've got any questions or want to get a copy of the book, I also have my own physical stock, which, depending on the couriers, we can move around the country. But if you've just got any specific questions or any concerns, I'll happily respond to those.
Okay, that's quite a, if I may say, cumbersome email and contact. So I'm going to ask you to go through that again. And we're going to be able to do that because I've been able to put a power cable into my computer, which was missing and the battery was dying. It'll be okay now. All right. Let's go through the contact details again, Richard.
Okay, so it's Richard, Richard, at hellofoster.life.
Hellofoster.life.
Yeah.
Okay. And
right.
Hawkey is spelled Hawkey, not I-E, folks. Hawkey. And you can get all of it. Richard, I really want to, we could have been spoken for a lot longer because there's some, maybe we need to get you back at some point to talk about maybe the second half of this book and the practical side of what we're doing. I think we can talk about doing that. But good on you. I think that what I really do respect is that you are prepared. It takes people like you who are prepared to talk about this. A guy's kind of car guy to let other people feel, as you say, the average guy, to make other people feel that, you know what, I may be in this situation and it's not something that I need to be hiding or be ashamed of. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you've used this experience to give somebody essentially a guide to how they can solve the problem along with whoever it is that they're working with, but you're giving them something that they can hang on to in the form of this book called A Life Less Lived. And I think the fact that you've gone that extra mile is remarkable because it must have been therapy in itself just doing that. And I look at you and you're looking healthy and you're looking happy and you've gone through this thing. And I think that we learn as a society from people who have been through these things. And I really thank you for spending time this afternoon talking to us, but above all for taking the time to put this down into a book.
No, it's my absolute pleasure and privilege. And if those are my parting words, it would just be to say, absolutely, this is not an interminable, terminal illness. You can come back from it at any point in time. And, life is full and rich and wonderfully multicolored and there are good results to this. We know a lot about this illness. We know a lot more and more each day, and the treatments are getting better and better and better. So, don't despair, which is one of the unfortunate traits of depression, is the inability to see your way out of a situation.
Wood for trees.
There are ways out of it. Please do believe me.
All right, Judy's saying his book is great and very helpful. I have his email address, so she will be in touch with you and get this up onto our social media. Richard, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. and strength to you and your family. And I hope that many people find the value in this book that I believe exists. And again, I come back to the fact that you have taken the time and trouble to do this, and you've not done it for you, you've done it for other people. And I think that is quite remarkable. I'm going to play out with a song that is going to mean much to you. And if anybody goes and reads this book, they will understand why I am playing Barry White here, the first, my last, my everything, because it features
wonderful.
in the book. Richard, thank you so much for your time, and we will be in touch.
Lovely. Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome. Here's Barry White.